She doesn't leave when she walks away. She leaves much earlier, long before the goodbye, long before the distance is obvious, long before anyone realizes something has changed. By the time she actually goes, she has already learned how to live without you emotionally. And that is the part most people never see, because detachment doesn't announce itself. It doesn't argue. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't create chaos. Detachment is quiet. It happens in moments no one notices. A moment when she stops correcting misunderstandings. A moment when she stops asking to be understood. A moment when she realizes explaining herself costs more energy than staying silent. That moment changes everything. Women rarely detach because of one big mistake. They detach because of accumulation, small emotional misses, repeated invalidation, unheard feelings, unmet emotional expectations. Not dramatic events, but consistent emotional friction. And friction over time creates withdrawal. Not physically, internally. First, she tries harder. She explains more clearly, expresses more softly, adjusts her tone, chooses better words. She believes connection can be repaired through effort. But effort without emotional return creates exhaustion. And exhaustion is the birthplace of detachment. This is the stage where she still loves, but begins protecting herself from loving too deeply. She becomes careful with her emotions, selective, measured, not cold, controlled, because she has learned something painful. Feeling deeply without feeling safe is dangerous. So she limits depth, not because she wants less connection, but because deep connection now feels unsafe. This is where detachment quietly begins, not as rejection, as regulation. The nervous system begins pulling back emotional investment, not consciously, biologically, because constant emotional strain teaches the brain one lesson. This bond costs too much, and the brain always seeks efficiency. Even at the cost of intimacy, she may still stay present, still talk, still smile, still say, "I'm fine," but something fundamental has shifted. She is no longer emotionally leaning in. She is standing upright, alone, not angry, not distant, just self-contained. This is why detachment is so confusing to the other side. There is no fight, no warning, no dramatic change, just a subtle loss of emotional warmth, less curiosity, less reaction, less vulnerability. And vulnerability is the oxygen of emotional connection. Without it, bonds weaken silently. At this stage, she is no longer trying to be understood. She is trying to remain stable, because instability hurts more than loneliness. And stability without connection starts feeling preferable. This is a painful trade, but one many women make unconsciously. Detachment is not about falling out of love. It's about falling out of emotional dependence. She stops needing reassurance, stops seeking validation, stops hoping someone else will regulate her emotions. She becomes internally self-sufficient, and self-sufficiency feels powerful at first. But it comes with distance. This is where a dangerous shift happens. She begins observing the relationship instead of experiencing it. She watches herself react. Instead of reacting freely, emotion becomes monitored, filtered, controlled, because emotional freedom once led to pain. So she contains it. And once emotions are contained long enough, they stop flowing naturally. She still cares, but care no longer moves her. It exists quietly without urgency. And urgency is what keeps attachment alive. This is why detachment feels sudden from the outside. But inside her, it has been developing for a long time. Weeks, months, sometimes years. Each time she felt unseen. Each time she swallowed a feeling. Each time she chose silence instead of explanation. Each silence became a step away. She doesn't detach because she wants to leave. She detaches because she is preparing herself in case she has to. This is not abandonment. It is emotional insurance. If this ends, I will survive. That thought is never spoken, but the body prepares anyway. At this point, she begins imagining life emotionally independent. Not consciously, emotionally. She doesn't fantasize about leaving. She simply stops fearing it. And when fear disappears, attachment weakens. Because attachment thrives on emotional risk. Without risk, there is no pull. This is the moment that truly matters. Not when she leaves, but when she stops being afraid to lose the connection. That's when detachment becomes irreversible. Because once someone accepts loss emotionally, they no longer fight for closeness. They only maintain surface harmony. This is why she may appear calm near the end. Even kind, even gentle. There is no chaos left. Because chaos requires emotional investment. And investment has already been withdrawn. She has already grieved silently, already processed the disappointment, already adjusted expectations, already let go internally. So when she finally leaves, she is not starting the pain. She is finishing it. Detachment doesn't begin with distance. It begins with disappointment. Not loud disappointment, not dramatic disappointment, the quiet kind, the kind she doesn't talk about, the kind she keeps replaying alone in her mind. Disappointment is dangerous because it changes expectation. At first, she expects understanding. Then she hopes for it. Then she waits for it. And finally, she stops expecting anything at all. That final shift is where attachment begins to collapse. When expectations die, emotional energy follows. Because attachment feeds on anticipation. The hope that someone will show up emotionally. The belief that closeness will feel safe again. But when disappointment repeats without repair, the mind adapts. It lowers expectation to avoid pain. Lower expectations feel protective, but protection always comes with distance. This is when she stops reacting the way she used to, not because she doesn't care, but because reacting no longer feels useful. Why express hurt if it changes nothing? Why explain feelings if they keep being misunderstood? Why open up if opening up leads to exhaustion? So she internalizes instead. Internalization feels mature on the surface. She becomes calmer, more composed, less reactive. People often mistake this for growth. But inside, something else is happening. Emotion is being rerouted away from connection, toward containment, toward self-regulation, toward emotional solitude. When disappointment becomes familiar, the nervous system adjusts. It no longer spikes emotionally. It stops hoping. And hope is the engine of attachment. Without hope, attachment loses momentum. So she doesn't cling. She doesn't argue. She doesn't demand change. She simply adapts. This adaptation is subtle but powerful. She stops imagining future closeness, stops visualizing emotional repair, stops fantasizing about how things could be, because imagination once fueled longing, and longing once led to pain. So the mind shuts that door quietly. Now something shifts internally. She becomes emotionally realistic. Not romantic, not idealistic, realistic. She sees things as they are, not as she wishes them to be. And realism reduces attachment, because attachment thrives on possibility, not certainty. This is why she may begin sounding emotionally neutral, not cold, just factual. She speaks with less emotion, responds with less intensity, because emotional investment has been dialed down, not removed, reduced. The brain does this intentionally. Reduced emotional amplitude means reduced disappointment. So the mind chooses emotional moderation. Flatness feels safer than hope. And safety always wins when someone has been hurt repeatedly. At this stage, she is still present, still caring, still loyal, but no longer emotionally dependent. And emotional dependence is what creates deep bonding. Without it, attachment weakens quietly. She is no longer afraid of emotional distance. She has learned to exist inside it. Silence doesn't scare her anymore. Space doesn't trigger anxiety, because she has trained herself to self-soothe. And self-soothing reduces emotional reliance on others. This is when people say, "She's changed." And yes, she has, not into someone else, into someone emotionally self-contained. Self-containment is protective, but it is also isolating, because connection requires openness, and openness now feels optional, not essential. So attachment loosens, not intentionally, naturally. This is where detachment becomes structural, not emotional. Her attachment style itself shifts from anxious or engaged to distant, to self-regulating, to inward. This shift is not a choice. It is adaptation. And adaptation, once formed, resists reversal, because the nervous system remembers pain longer than love. So even when moments of warmth appear, her system stays guarded, not because she wants to leave, because she has learned how to survive without needing. At this stage, something profound changes inside her. She no longer feels connection instinctively. She thinks connection instead. Emotion moves from the heart to the mind, and that shift changes everything. Earlier, closeness was felt. Now it is evaluated. She doesn't respond emotionally. She analyzes. She notices patterns, counts effort, measures consistency, because emotional reactions once hurt her. So the mind steps in to take control. Logic becomes protection. Logic feels safe. Logic doesn't ache. Logic doesn't hope. Logic doesn't get disappointed. So the brain gives logic more authority, and emotion loses influence. This is when love begins to feel heavy, not warm, because love without emotional spontaneity becomes responsibility. She shows up not because she feels pulled, but because she believes she should. And should is not bonding. Should is duty. Duty sustains behavior, but it does not sustain attachment. Attachment requires desire, and desire cannot survive under constant analysis. She begins asking questions internally. Is this good for me? Is this healthy? Is this sustainable? These are reasonable questions, but they appear only after emotion has weakened. Because when attachment is strong, we don't calculate. We feel. Calculation is a sign of emotional distance, not immaturity, self-preservation. She has learned that unexamined emotion costs her stability. So she examines everything now. Tone, words, effort, reactions. This constant monitoring prevents vulnerability, because vulnerability requires letting go of control, and control is now her safety. At this stage, even affection feels different, not uncomfortable, just muted. She may appreciate affection intellectually, but not absorb it emotionally. It lands but doesn't sink, because emotional receptivity has narrowed. This is why reassurance doesn't restore closeness anymore, because reassurance speaks to emotion, but emotion is no longer in charge. Logic is, and logic asks for patterns, not promises, consistency, not moments. And when consistency once failed, logic never forgets. So she remains guarded, calm, reasonable, but distant, not intentionally, structurally. Her emotional architecture has changed. She is no longer reacting. She is managing expectations, managing closeness, managing emotional exposure. This management prevents pain, but it also prevents intimacy, because intimacy cannot be managed. It must be surrendered to. At this point, love feels tiring, not because of the person, because of the effort required to maintain emotional involvement. She feels like she must constantly regulate herself, and regulation drains energy, so emotional withdrawal increases. Quietly, this is where detachment becomes stable, not fluctuating, not reactive, stable. She is no longer oscillating between closeness and distance. She has chosen emotional moderation, flatness over intensity, predictability over passion. And once emotional flatness feels stable, going back to intensity feels dangerous, too much, too uncertain. So she doesn't move forward emotionally anymore. She stays exactly where she is, disconnected but functional. This is the most deceptive stage, because from the outside, everything seems okay. There are no fights, no drama, no collapse, just emotional quiet. But quiet here is not peace. It is disengagement. At some point, something very quiet happens inside her. She stops asking herself how to fix things, not because she doesn't care, but because the idea of fixing no longer feels necessary. This is the moment emotional disengagement transforms into acceptance. Acceptance not of loss, but of emotional separation. She no longer wonders, why are we like this? She simply observes, this is how it is. That sentence is dangerous because it contains no resistance. And where there is no resistance, attachment stops fighting. Earlier, detachment felt temporary, a pause, a recovery. Now it feels normal, and normality is powerful. When something becomes normal, the mind stops challenging it. She accepts emotional distance as part of life. Not tragic, not dramatic, just real. This is where emotional disengagement stabilizes completely. She does not wake up missing closeness. She doesn't crave emotional intimacy. She doesn't feel absence, because she has already reorganized her emotional needs inward. What once came from connection now comes from solitude. She begins finding comfort in independence, not the empowering kind spoken about online, but the quiet kind, the kind that says, "I'll be okay on my own." That sentence feels relieving, and relief weakens attachment, because attachment survives on emotional reliance. Without reliance, bonds loosen naturally. At this stage, she may still stay physically present, still participate, still communicate, but emotionally, she is living beside the relationship, not inside it. This creates a strange duality. She is there but not invested, available but not open, present but not attached. She no longer imagines a shared emotional future, not because she decided not to, but because imagining it feels unnecessary. She has learned how to be complete without emotional dependence. And completeness reduces longing. Longing is the glue of attachment. Without longing, connection becomes optional. Optional things are easy to release. This is why, when separation finally happens, she appears calm. Not because she doesn't feel pain, but because she already processed it. Privately, silently, over time. She didn't leave suddenly. She arrived at acceptance slowly. By now, emotional departure has already occurred. Physical departure becomes logistical, not emotional. The emotional goodbye already happened internally, long before words were spoken. This is why conversations near the end feel strange, flat, detached, emotionless, because emotion has already moved on. She is speaking from acceptance, not attachment. And acceptance does not argue. It doesn't beg. It doesn't resist. It simply allows. This stage confuses people deeply. They expect anger, tears, conflict, but she offers calm. And calm feels colder than anger ever could, because anger still contains attachment. Calm does not. At this point, she is no longer deciding whether to leave. She has already made peace with the idea of separation. Even if she hasn't chosen a date, even if she hasn't spoken it aloud, the emotional decision is complete. There comes a moment when emotion doesn't hurt anymore. And that's when everything is already over. Not because pain disappeared, but because the heart stopped reaching. She no longer feels anger. She no longer feels sadness. She doesn't feel longing. She doesn't feel disappointment. She feels neutral. And neutrality is not peace. Neutrality is absence. This is the most misunderstood stage. People think calm means healing. But this calm is different. This calm has no warmth, no desire, no pull, no emotional gravity. It is emotional gravity disappearing. At this stage, love doesn't transform. It dissolves. Not dramatically, quietly, because love requires emotional movement, and there is no movement left. She can talk normally, laugh lightly, respond kindly, but nothing reaches inward. Everything stays on the surface, because surface is safe. Depth is unnecessary. This is when she stops imagining us, not with pain, not with regret, simply without thought. The idea no longer appears, and when something no longer appears in the mind, it no longer lives emotionally. This is the moment she becomes emotionally unreachable, not because she blocks someone out, but because there is nothing left to access. The door isn't closed. The room is empty. She no longer waits for effort, no longer hopes for change, no longer listens for emotional signals, because hope has already been withdrawn, and hope is the final thread of attachment. Once hope leaves, love cannot stay. This is why reconciliation attempts fail at this stage, not because words are wrong, but because words require emotional resonance, and resonance is gone. She understands everything intellectually, but nothing lands emotionally. She doesn't feel cold. She feels complete, not joyful, not excited, just settled. And settled emotions do not reach backward. They move forward quietly. This is why, when she finally leaves, there is no dramatic goodbye, no explosion, no collapse, just departure, clean, contained, almost gentle, because emotionally, she left long ago. People say, she moved on so fast. But she didn't. She moved on slowly, over many silent nights, internal adjustments, and emotional recalibrations. The leaving you saw was the final step, not the beginning. This is the truth few want to face. When a woman becomes emotionally neutral, there is nothing left to fight for, because fighting requires feeling. And feeling has already been released. She didn't leave when she walked away. She left when she stopped hoping, when disappointment no longer hurt, because she no longer expected anything, when silence felt normal, when distance felt peaceful, when emotional neutrality felt safer than connection. That is when detachment was complete. Not in anger, not in hatred, not even in sadness, but in acceptance. Because once a woman learns how to live without emotional attachment, she no longer fears losing it. And when fear disappears, love has nothing left to hold on to. So when she finally leaves, it doesn't feel like an ending to her. Feels like alignment. The pain already passed. The grieving already happened. The goodbye already occurred, quietly, internally, long before words were spoken. This is why departures feel sudden to others, but inevitable to her, because she didn't walk away in that moment. She simply followed the direction her heart had taken. A long time ago,